I never meant to stare at her that long. But the first time I saw Elena, she was standing by the studio window with the late afternoon sun behind her, and something in me just stopped. Everything else, the humming AC, the clacking keyboards, even my own pulse, felt strangely distant, as if the room had stepped back to make space for whatever was happening between us. She didn't see me at first. She was rubbing a smudge from her glasses with slow, almost careful motions, as if afraid she might leave a fingerprint. A small, ordinary gesture, yet the way she did it made something in my chest feel unsteady. She looked like a woman who'd had years of being strong for other people, and maybe forgot what it felt like to soften for herself. When she finally turned, her eyes landed on me for a half-second too long. I pretended to adjust the strap of my bag, but my fingers fumbled, betraying me. She noticed, of course she did, and her lips curved into the faintest smile. Not a polite one. A knowing one. "You must be the new guy," she said. Her voice was warm, low, a little rough at the edges, like she'd spent the day talking more than she wanted to. She offered her hand, and when I took it, her fingers curled around mine with a confidence that sent a quiet shock through my arm. I didn't let go right away. She did. Gently, but deliberately. "I'm Elena. I run the design program." "I know," I said before thinking. "I mean, yeah? I heard." "Great. Smooth." She raised an eyebrow, amused, like she'd already figured out more about me in 30 seconds than I'd told anyone here in a week. She stepped closer to hand me a folder, and the soft brush of her sleeve against my wrist felt strangely electric. I tried not to react, but my breath caught just a little. Her gaze flicked toward my hand. She noticed that too. The room suddenly felt too warm. We stood there in the kind of silence that isn't uncomfortable, just charged. Like both of us were aware of something neither of us was willing to name. "Not yet." She looked away first, but not fast enough to hide the small exhale she released, almost like she'd forgotten I was closer than she expected. "You're early," she said, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Most people show up late on their first week. I wanted to, make a good impression." Her eyes softened at that. She didn't say anything, but a tiny shift in her expression, barely a tilt of her mouth, a flick of her lashes, felt like a quiet thank you. She walked toward the project table, motioning for me to follow. The scent of her, something light, clean, with a hint of citrus, drifted back to me. It was ridiculous how aware I was of it. How aware I was of her. Of the way she straightened a stack of papers even though they were already straight. Of how her shoulders eased only after she thought I'd stopped watching. But I hadn't. She looked over her shoulder when she felt it, my gaze lingering. Her eyes met mine again, this time slower, deeper. It felt like she was searching for something in my face, and maybe fighting something in herself. "You're staring," she said quietly. I swallowed. "Sorry. You don't have to be." She said it so softly I almost wondered if I imagined it. The air between us tightened. Her fingers brushed mine again as she handed me a pen, light, fleeting, but enough to make my pulse stumble. Before either of us could say anything else, the studio door swung open. We both jerked slightly apart, not much, just enough to pretend there was nothing to step away from. Elena's eyes flicked to the doorway, then back to me. And the look she gave me then, small, startled, unguarded, told me everything was about to change. The door closed behind the assistant who'd interrupted us, but the moment didn't quite go back to normal. Not for me. And definitely not for her. Elena kept her posture straight, her expression polite, but something in her focus wasn't entirely on the conversation happening in front of us. Her eyes drifted toward me twice, quick, careful flickers like she was checking if I'd stepped back, or if I was still standing where she could feel me. I was. After the assistant left, she exhaled quietly, barely audible. "Sorry about that," she murmured. "It's fine," I replied, though my voice came out lower than intended. We went back to reviewing the project list, standing side by side. She was close enough that when she leaned in to point something out, her shoulder brushed mine. Light. Accidental. But she didn't move away right away. Neither did I. Only when she realized how close her breath was to my cheek did she inhale sharply and put an inch of space back between us. An inch that felt like a mile. I pretended to adjust a stack of samples to hide the way my fingers trembled. She noticed that too. As we worked, she shared small pieces of her past without meaning to. A comment about doing everything alone, as usual. A muttered remark about people assuming she had it all together. The way her smile faded when someone mentioned her ex-husband in passing. It wasn't gossip, she said it like facts she'd learned to carry without thinking. You ever regret staying somewhere too long? She asked suddenly, flipping through color swatches. The question wasn't about work. Not even remotely. I looked at her. Yeah. More than I admit. She nodded once, as if she already expected that answer. As if she felt it too. I almost asked her what she regretted staying in, or leaving, or losing, but her jaw tightened, and I knew she wouldn't tell me. Not yet. People in the building talked about her, in those low voices older colleagues use when someone stands out just enough. Too graceful. Too composed. Too intimidating. Too much older. I heard the whispers on my second day. She could be his mother. He's going to get attached. They always do. She won't make the same mistake twice. I pretended not to hear them, but a part of me tightened every time. Not out of shame, something else. Something that made my chest warm, then uncomfortably tight. Maybe she'd heard the whispers too. Maybe that was why she kept one hand always busy, tapping a pen, adjusting her sleeve, brushing invisible dust from the table. Small movements to distract from how still the air felt between us. Later that evening, when most of the floor had emptied, Elena came over to where I sat reviewing a draft. She placed a hand lightly, so lightly, on my shoulder, leaning over to look at the screen. Her hand stayed a second too long. My breath caught. She felt it. I knew she did, because her fingers twitched before she slowly pulled them away, but didn't step back. Her hair brushed against my cheek as she leaned closer, her voice soft. You did good today. I swallowed. Because you helped. That made her go still. Not a freeze, just a pause, as if she wasn't used to being told she mattered. She straightened slowly, but her eyes didn't leave mine. For the first time, she didn't look guarded. Or untouchable. She looked unsure. And the silence between us was thick enough to feel on my skin. Then she reached out, hesitated, and tapped her fingers lightly against my wrist. Barely a touch. Barely anything. But it was the most deliberate thing she'd done all day. And it changed everything. It happened on a Thursday, one of those painfully quiet afternoons where the building felt hollow and every small sound seemed louder than it should. Elena and I were reviewing a layout on the large monitor, standing closer than usual because the text was small and the lighting in the room was dim. She reached to adjust the brightness, and her arm brushed against my chest. Not hard, just enough to feel the warmth of her skin through the thin fabric of her sleeve. She froze for the briefest second, then continued as if nothing happened. But her breath wasn't steady. Neither was mine. Here, she said quietly, tapping the corner of the screen. This part needs. Her voice broke off when my hand moved at the same time and our fingers touched. Not a graze. A full, warm press of skin against skin. She inhaled sharply. I didn't pull away. For 2 heartbeats, either of us moved. Then, footsteps. Fast ones. Coming down the hall. Elena jerked back so quickly she bumped the table, the sound echoing through the room. I stepped away instinctively, grabbing the nearest folder just to look occupied. The door pushed open. It was Marco from the animation department. Hey, Elena, did you get the... He stopped. Looked at her. Then at me. One eyebrow rose, subtle but sharp. Elena spoke too quickly. We were just going over the interface update. Her tone was smooth, professional. Too professional. Marco's eyes lingered a second too long, analyzing the gap, or lack of gap, between us. I could feel Elena's tension from across the table. Right, he said slowly. Just checking. When he left, she didn't speak right away. She pressed both hands flat against the table as if grounding herself. I watched her shoulders rise and fall with a quiet breath she didn't want me to notice. You okay? I asked. She nodded once, but her fingers trembled as she tucked her hair behind her ear. It's just. She stopped. Closed her eyes for half a second. This could look bad. For you. For both of us. I stepped closer, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel my presence. It already looked bad, I said softly. Before he walked in. A humorless laugh slipped from her, barely a breath. You're too young to be this reckless. I'm not being reckless. You are, she whispered, more to herself than to me. But she didn't move away. Her gaze dropped to my mouth for a fraction of a second, so quick I almost doubted it. Almost. But then she lifted her eyes again, and there was no hiding the ache behind them. Elena, I murmured, not even sure what I was asking. She shook her head gently. Don't. But her body leaned toward me anyway, betraying her words. My hand rose, slow, uncertain, stopping just short of her cheek. She didn't pull back. Her breath brushed my thumb, warm, shaky. We were close, closer than we'd ever been. If either of us tilted forward even an inch, our lips would meet. Her eyes fluttered halfway shut. Someone could come in, she whispered. Then don't move. She didn't. Neither did I. The air between us tightened, electric, fragile. The kind of tension that feels like it can't end without breaking something open. Then, a phone buzzed sharply on the table beside her. She flinched. I dropped my hand. Her screen lit up with a name. She quickly turned face down. Too quickly. We stared at each other, breaths uneven, hearts in our throats. Still close. Still caught. Still unable to step away. And despite everything, the interruption, the fear, the guilt, we stood there, drawn together by something neither of us could deny anymore. The next few days were a quiet kind of torture. Elena avoided standing too close, avoided unnecessary touches, avoided letting her gaze linger on me for more than a heartbeat. She pretended everything was professional, calm, normal. But she couldn't hide the way her voice softened when she said my name. Or how her hands paused over mine before she forced herself to pull away. Or the tiny, fleeting glances she thought I didn't notice. The distance she tried to create only made the space between us feel tighter. And on Friday evening, it finally snapped. We were the last two in the building, again. She stood by the drafting table, massaging her temples, tired in a way that wasn't just about work. I watched her in the reflection of the window, her shoulders drawn in, her lips pressed tight, the weight of something old sitting heavily on her posture. Elena? I asked softly. She didn't turn. You should go home. It's late. So should you. I stay late every night, she said, a brittle laugh escaping. Habits. Or maybe, punishments. That last word slipped out before she could swallow it. I came closer, slowly, giving her time to stop me if she wanted. She didn't move. You're not punishing yourself, I said. You're hiding. Her breath caught. It was tiny, but unmistakable. And what? She whispered. Do you think I'm hiding from? Me. That made her turn. Her expression wasn't angry, it was raw. Unprotected. Like a door she'd fought to keep shut had just rattled loose. You don't understand what this would look like, she said, stepping back. I'm older. Much older. People talk. People assume things. And I'm tired of being. She stopped, swallowing hard. Tired of being what? I asked. Her eyes shone, not with tears, but with something sharper, more dangerous. A mistake. I shook my head, stepping forward until we were only inches apart. You don't feel like a mistake to me. She closed her eyes as if the words hurt. You're too young, she whispered. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. Her breathing quickened. She tried to step away, but her back hit the table. I didn't touch her, just placed a hand near hers, close enough that the warmth between our fingers felt like a pull. "Elena," I said, voice low, "tell me you don't feel anything when I look at you." Her eyes flicked open. Wide. Vulnerable. Cornered. "That's not fair," she whispered. "Tell me." She shook her head once, tiny, helpless. My hand rose without thinking, brushing a loose strand of hair away from her cheek. She didn't stop me. Her lips parted, just slightly, a shaky breath escaping as my fingers grazed her jaw. "You make this impossible," she said, her voice trembling. "Then stop me." Her eyes fell to my mouth, slowly, undeniably, before lifting again. "I can't," she breathed. The admission ripped something open between us. I leaned in, just a fraction. She didn't move. Her hands gripped the edge of the table. Her chest brushed lightly against mine on her next breath. "Say something," she whispered. Before I could, the lights in the hallway flickered, footsteps approaching. Elena's eyes widened. We were seconds, away from something we couldn't undo. And the footsteps came closer. The footsteps stopped just outside the room. Elena and I sprang apart, too abruptly to look innocent. Her hand slipped from the table, brushing my hip as she moved, and the jolt of that small touch lingered between us like static. The door handle rattled. She straightened her blouse with shaking fingers. I forced my breathing to steady. But the door didn't open. A voice echoed down the hallway instead, low, familiar, too close to ignore. "Elena? You still here?" Her entire body tensed. It wasn't a coworker. It wasn't Marco. It was the voice from the caller ID she'd hidden earlier. "Elena, can we talk?" The voice called again, footsteps drawing nearer. She whispered, barely audible. "He followed me here." My chest tightened. "Who is he?" She didn't answer in words. The look she gave me said enough. Not a boyfriend. Not exactly. Something worse, someone who still believed he had a place in her life. Her ex-husband. And he'd overheard something. Enough to look for her. Enough to follow. Her breathing turned shallow fast. I instinctively reached for her arm, not to pull her close, just to steady her. But when my fingers grazed her skin, she pulled back like the touch burned her. Not because she didn't want it. Because someone else was here who shouldn't be. "Elena?" he called again. "I heard voices." She winced, just slightly, but enough. "He thinks you're..." she managed. "With someone?" I whispered. She didn't nod, didn't speak. But her eyes confirmed it. We stood frozen in the half-dark room, the tension between us replaced by a new kind of heat, fear, anger, desire, all tangled. Her ex's footsteps stopped right outside the door. "Elena, open up!" She pressed a hand to her mouth, forcing her breathing silent. I stepped closer without thinking, my shoulder almost brushing hers. She didn't move away this time. She needed my presence, even if she hated that she needed it. "You don't owe him anything," I murmured. Her eyes closed for a heartbeat, as if the words hurt more than they helped. "He still thinks we could fix things," she whispered. "He never accepted that I left. And now he thinks you left him, for me." The truth hung heavy between us. She didn't deny it. Couldn't. Her ex tried the handle again. "Elena, I know you're in there. I saw your car." Elena stepped back, not from fear but from something close to shame, old, instinctive, learned. I hated seeing that in her. Hated how she curled in on herself, as if bracing for judgment she no longer deserved. I moved in front of her slightly, not blocking her, just there. Close enough that if she shifted even an inch, her body would meet mine. My hand hovered near hers, close enough for her to take it, far enough not to push her. "Do you want me to leave?" I whispered. Her eyes rose to mine, wide and conflicted. "No," she breathed. The door handle shook again, harder this time. Her pulse raced visibly at her throat. "Then say it," I said softly. "I don't want you to leave." The admission changed everything. Her ex banged on the door, furious now. Elena! She startled, but instead of backing away, she stepped toward me. Not a full embrace. Just close enough that her breath warmed my collar, close enough that her shoulder brushed my chest, close enough that I felt the tremor running through her. And then she whispered, so quietly it could have been mistaken for a breath. This has to end with us deciding something, before he decides for me. And just like that, we crossed a line we couldn't uncross. Her ex's voice kept echoing outside the door, but something shifted in the space between us, something sharper, more urgent than fear. Elena stood so close I could feel the warmth of her breath against my collarbone, the faint tremor in her fingers as she tightened her grip on the edge of the table behind her. She wasn't looking at the door anymore. She was looking at me. Really looking. I can't keep pretending this is nothing, she whispered. Her voice was strained, but not with panic, something deeper. I stepped closer slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. You don't have to, I murmured. Her chest rose sharply, the fabric of her blouse brushing mine for a single, electric second. It was barely a touch, but her body reacted like it was a declaration, her breath catching, her lashes fluttering. This is wrong, she whispered. But you feel it, I said. The words landed between us like a truth she could no longer outrun. Her ex hit the door again, louder. She flinched, but this time her instinct wasn't to move away, it was to move toward me. Her fingers brushed my forearm, hesitated, then curled lightly around it. Not pulling. Not claiming. Just holding on. He thinks he still owns pieces of my life, she said, voice tight. And I've spent years letting him decide what parts I'm allowed to keep. Her eyes lifted to mine, tired, conflicted, wanting. And then you, she breathed. You show up and make everything impossible. I leaned in, my forehead almost touching hers. Her pulse stuttered at the contact. Then choose what's right for you, I said quietly. Not what's safe. She swallowed, throat working. You're younger. There's so much you don't know you'll lose by choosing me. I lifted a hand to her face, slowly, giving her every chance to stop me. My fingers brushed her cheek, soft and deliberate. She leaned into the touch before she realized she had, her breath slipping out in a shaky exhale. You're not something I lose, I said. You're something I want. Her eyes softened, then tightened, as if she were fighting something inside herself. If we do this, we don't get to go back. I know. And you might regret. I cut her off gently. I don't. The silence between us thickened, warmer than fear, heavier than hesitation. Her ex was still outside, muttering, pacing, waiting, but all Elena seemed to hear was my breath, my words, the closeness she tried so hard to deny. Tell me to walk away, I whispered. I will. She didn't answer. Her hand slid from my forearm to my wrist, her thumb brushing the inside lightly, slow, almost reverent. A trembling, deliberate touch. She wasn't pulling me closer, but she wasn't letting go either. Her ex slammed a fist against the door. She blinked, startled, but instead of retreating, she pressed her forehead fully against mine, her breath mingling with mine in a warm, desperate rhythm. I'm tired, she whispered. Tired of choosing fear. My hand cupped her jaw. She let out a sound, small, breathy, unguarded. Then don't, I murmured. Elena's lips parted, not for a kiss, yet, but for the truth she'd been swallowing for days. I choose you. And for the first time, there was no space left between us, not emotionally, not physically, not in the quiet breath that trembled in the inches separating our mouths. We both knew what came next. And neither of us was going to stop it. The garden behind the retreat house was quiet, washed in the soft amber glow of lanterns strung from tree to tree. It felt like the world had taken one slow breath and finally exhaled. She stood there with her arms wrapped around herself, as if unsure whether to stay or step back inside. But when he walked toward her, she didn't move away. She just watched him, not guarded, not defensive anymore, simply open. Are you okay? He asked, his voice gentler than it had been all day. Her eyes flickered, unsure at first. Yes. I think I am. Just overwhelmed. He nodded, stepping close enough that their shadows blended into one shape on the ground. Me too. This whole thing, you, us, it's not simple. It's the age difference, she whispered, finally naming what they both had been dancing around. I kept thinking you'd wake up one day and realize it was a phase. That I was just something temporary. He shook his head quietly. Nothing about what I feel for you has ever been temporary. Then he hesitated, not for lack of certainty, but because the moment felt delicate, like a thread that could break if he pulled too hard. I was scared too, you know. Scared you'd think I wasn't ready for something real. A soft laugh escaped her. Not mocking, just relieved. We're really good at being afraid, aren't we? He smiled, and the tension in his shoulders finally eased. Maybe. But I'm tired of being afraid. She took a small step toward him. Not dramatic, not bold, just one honest move forward. And he met her halfway. They stood so close that he could feel the warmth rising from her skin, the faint tremble in her breath, the way her fingers brushed the back of his hand like she was testing the reality of the moment. I don't want to keep running from this, she said quietly. Not anymore. He lifted her hand slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Her fingers curled around his in a soft, certain grip. It wasn't a kiss, it wasn't a dramatic declaration. It was something steadier, a promise shaped in silence. I'm here, he murmured. If you choose me, I'm really here. She leaned her forehead gently against his, her breath warm against his lips without closing the final inch between them. I choose you, she whispered. I think I've been choosing you for a long time. I was just afraid to admit it. His hand slid to the small of her back, a quiet, comforting touch that grounded them both. She melted into him, not with urgency, but with relief, like two people finally stepping into the place they were meant to stand. No fireworks, no chaos, just a long, slow embrace beneath lantern light, their bodies fitting together, as if the hesitation had never existed. When they finally pulled back, their fingers stayed intertwined naturally, effortlessly, like they'd been waiting for this moment all along. He pressed a warm, lingering kiss to her forehead, not claiming her, just cherishing her. She closed her eyes, letting the last of her doubts fall away. We're really doing this, she breathed. Yes, he whispered. Together. And this time, they both believed it.